Ruto was a slum dweller who often snuck into the junkyards of the wealthy to steal whatever still had use. However, when he gets framed for the murder of his foster father, and tossed into the pit where all the world's garbage ends up, he is forced to fight towering monsters made of trash in order to climb his way back up, and claim his revenge. The world itself is split into two halves. On one side lies the pristine city, where the rich live in luxury, sipping their lives like fine wine. And on the other side exist the slums, where people like him are forced to rot. The only thing linking the two is the pit, the bottomless dump where all garbage flows, including criminals. The rich throw away even slightly damaged things without a thought. Like the woman who tells her daughter to toss the puppy toy she had just bought, simply because it got a little damaged. She says the toy will only look ugly if they repair it, and they can just buy another later. The girl, who already acts like a future rich villain, nods without a problem. The mother casually throws the puppy toy, along with other junk, into the garbage vent that connects to an underground truck tunnel, leading everything to a massive trash collection site. Down there, the young Ruto is already present, scavenging through the goods the trucks haul in. He sneaks deeper into the collection site and slips into one of the rooms. But luck runs out when a guard hears some rustling. The man barges in with his gun aimed at Ruto, spitting insults, calling him a disgusting degenerate ruining the city's beauty by hoarding trash. Ruto does not even bother replying because he hears that exact line every Tuesday, sometimes twice if it is a holiday. But the guard sets off the alarm, summoning backup. More guards rush in, but Ruto quickly hurls garbage bags at them. The clean freaks panic the moment raw eggs splatter their spotless uniforms, freezing in place as Ruto climbs up the vent. He reaches near the exit, but the gate slams shut right in his face. More guards appear behind him. They start shooting at him, but Ruto casually dodges the bullets while doing parkour through the hall. He then runs in a straight line towards the exit, and the guards can't hit him even then because they all graduated from the Stormtrooper Academy. However, one stray bullet grazes Ruto's arm just as he jumps over the wall, getting out of the guard sight. While they waste their time searching for him, he climbs out of a sewer hole, cursing the guards because what's the point of guarding garbage when no one wants it? By the next day, the news of the garbage raiders spreads across the city, with the upper-class citizens pointing fingers at the slum dwellers. On the other side of the wall, however, the slum folk know exactly who did it because it is not Ruto's first time sneaking into the trash sites. They believe he will get caught one day, and most of them secretly hope he does. Ruto does not care about their opinions as he sets up his shop to sell the repaired goods he found. His friend Shiwa storms in, scolding him, demanding why he risks so much just to dig through the garbage of the city people. Ruto replies that the rich toss out perfectly usable things without care. He feels sorry for the items, so he retrieves them. And if he makes some money selling them, that is just a bonus. Chiwa sighs, half understanding him. But then, 3 boys show up, pinching their noses and whining about the stench of garbage. They warn Chiwa to stay away from Ruto, or she will smell just as foul. They mock his thick black gloves, which apparently have not been washed since Obama was in office, and claim one touch will give anyone rashes. One boy kicks a lantern Ruto had just fixed, sneering that no one would buy this trash anyway. He says Ruto's hands must be even creepier than the gloves, which is why he keeps them hidden. Ruto endures their words silently, but when one boy calls him the son of a murderer, his rage boils over. The insults do not stop either. They say the slum itself was built to imprison criminals, and that the current residents are just their cursed descendants. That is why everyone tries so hard to keep their reputation clean. But Ruto's father, they claim, ruined it all by becoming a murderer. Ruto cannot put up with the insults any longer, and he shoots such a deadly glare at the boys that they nearly soil their pants before bolting away. Even while running, they keep cursing him and saying he will surely become a murderer like his father one day. Ruto simply returns to fixing the lantern quietly, hammering away like he is smashing their words into silence. Chiwa then tells him that she believes he is actually a good person who will never turn into the kind of man his father was. Ruto blushes so hard that it looks like someone splashed red paint on him. Before he can mumble his thanks, Chiwa notices the puppy toy sitting nearby. It turns out Ruto picked it up last night from the dump as a gift for her, though he has been building up the courage to hand it over. But before his courage bar can fill up to 100%, Chiwa's mother shows up out of nowhere, and drags her away like a raid boss pulling an NPC. Ruto heads home afterward and finds his foster father, Regto, waiting for him with the look of someone who knows too much. Regto immediately starts imitating Ruto's nervous stuttering from earlier when he tried to give the puppy to Chiwa, leaving Ruto turning so red that a tomato might sue him for copyright infringement. Ruto curses himself for not noticing Recto spying the whole scene. Recto brushes it off, saying that they will talk about his failed romantic side quest later, because first they need to discuss Ruto's late-night junkyard adventure. He tells Ruto not to push himself too much since they are not exactly starving, unlike his shopping cart full of trash. He also thinks Ruto is pushing hard because he still feels a bit indebted after being adopted, considering his real father was tossed into the pit for murder. Ruto explains it is not about debt at all. To him, Recto is real family and he just wants to do his share. Recto smirks and says he should be just as honest with Chiwa, causing Ruto to fumble like he just got hit with a lag spike. In his clumsy panic, he reopens the bullet wound from last night. Recto quickly switches from teasing dad to healer mode, giving him first aid, and also rewrapping the bandages around his scarred hands. As Ruto stares at his hands, his memory rewinds to how they have always been injured, earning stares and whispers from people who judged him without mercy. Sometimes the wounds burned so badly he thought his hands were cooking on a grill. Then came the day Recto gave him the thick black gloves that somehow suppressed the pain, a gift that became his armor against the world. Once the patchwork is done, Recto pokes fun again, warning Ruto to confess his feelings to Chiwa soon, before another guy pulls an NPC romance steal. While the two of them banter like a sitcom duo, a masked stranger hides in the shadows outside, listening to every word like a nosy neighbor in horror mode. The next day, Ruto finally grinds enough courage points to confess properly. He walks toward Chiwa's home holding the puppy like a knight holding a legendary artifact. On the way, however, he comes across a grim but all too common sight in the slums. At the edge lies the pit where all the city's garbage and condemned criminals are dumped. Today, another unfortunate man is about to be thrown in. Ruto stands frozen, watching the execution, and wondering what truly happens to the people inside that abyss. Just then, Chiwa arrives beside him, saying the sight is brutal. Ruto panics because he was absolutely not ready for a sudden encounter. Chiwa starts chatting about the executions and the harshness of it all, then suddenly turns serious, telling Ruto she does not want him to end up thrown into that pit. She explains that while there may be many things worth saving from the trash, risking his life over it is not worth it. Ruto admits that Recto told him the exact same thing. Chiwa smiles softly and says it is because Recto loves him too. Ruto's 2 MB RAM brain overheats trying to process her words. He thinks Chiwa just confessed that she loves him too. Chiwa immediately realizes how her words can be taken, and goes red like a malfunctioning light bulb. But by then Ruto is already glitching, clutching his face and rolling on the ground from happiness overload. He then gathers enough sense to hand her the puppy toy, awkwardly saying that she might not want it since it came from the garbage, but he thought the toy would be happier with her. To his shock and joy, Chiwa accepts it warmly, saying she will treasure it. That single moment fills Ruto with more happiness than he has ever felt in his life. On his way back, he dances and hops through the streets like a kid who just cleared a final boss, already plotting how to brag to Recto about his victory. Along the way, he bumps into some city guards. They do not bother with him at all, brushing past like he is invisible. But Ruto cannot help but wonder why they are suddenly snooping around the slums. Anyway, Ruto reaches home and begins telling Recto about everything that happened just as he pushes the door open. But he freezes in shock when he sees Recto lying on the ground with a creepy masked man on top of him. The masked man turns his head, takes one look at Ruto, and then drives his knife even deeper into Recto's body. Ruto completely loses it at the sight and charges at the masked killer, but he gets struck so hard that he doesn't even realize the moment he gets knocked out. By the time Ruto regains his senses, the masked murderer has already finished his job. The man casually picks up a book from the floor and walks outside, briefly glancing at Ruto before leaving. Ruto tries to follow him, but then he hears Recto's faint voice. Recto is somehow still alive. With his final breath, he begs Ruto to run away. Ruto rushes to his side, insisting that he will bring help, but Recto just keeps repeating that he must run, and change this rotten heap of a world into something better. With that, Recto's body finally goes limp, and Ruto is unable to process what just happened. At that very moment, soldiers storm inside and immediately zap him, declaring that he is the murderer. They slam him to the ground and tell him he is under arrest for murder. Ruto shouts back that it wasn't him. But the guards tell him that nothing he says matters anymore since they caught him red-handed. He tries desperately to explain that the real murderer had just left, and they still have a chance to catch him, but the guards don't bother to listen. Instead, they knock him out the traditional way, with a punch to the head. Soon, Ruto is dragged to the scaffold where his execution is about to take place. Everyone from the slums gathers to witness him being thrown into the pit, and even high-profile nobles from the main city come to watch. The judge declares that murder is among the greatest crimes a person can commit. And even though Ruto only killed a lowly slum dweller, the punishment will not be reduced. He announces that Ruto will be executed by being thrown into the pit, and the crowd erupts into cheers at the verdict. Ruto still can't believe any of this is real. He silently wishes that just one person would believe he is innocent. His eyes scan the crowd, and they finally lock on Chiwa. Ruto yells out to her, insisting that he did not kill Recto and begging her to find the real culprit. But Chiwa only says that she trusted him, and he was not worthy of that trust. She calls him a murderer's son after all, and then drops the toy he gave her as she turns her back on him. That betrayal cuts deeper than anything else, and Ruto completely snaps. He screams at the crowd, calling them the true filth, just mindless piles of meat without a brain or will of their own. He swears that one day he will send them all to hell. In that moment, his eyes widen as he notices the real murderer among the crowd. But before he can expose him, the guards push him off the edge. Ruto feels like he is falling forever, and eventually he loses consciousness. Luckily, the mountain of garbage piled at the bottom breaks his landing. When he wakes up, he finds himself completely unharmed. Confused, he wonders how he is still alive, but then the foul stench of the pit overwhelms him. Even a garbage thief like him is forced to cover his nose. As he looks around, he sees an endless sea of trash along with strange things he doesn't recognize. Ruto mutters in disbelief, trying to figure out what this place really is, when suddenly a massive shadow looms over him. He slowly turns his head, and his eyes go wide as he sees a gigantic monster made entirely out of garbage, bearing its fangs right at him. Ruto's mind goes blank for a moment after seeing the monstrous creature before him. He recalls how he always found it strange that everyone on the surface was obsessed with sending garbage and unwanted people down into the pit. Yet none of them ever cared about what became of them afterward. Nobody even bothered to think about what might exist down there, and that ignorance always bothered him. But he quickly snaps out of it as the gigantic monster starts closing in, forcing him to run for his life. The situation takes a darker turn when the monster lets out a thunderous roar, summoning even more grotesque creatures from the heaps of garbage. They rush toward Ruto, who sprints as fast as he can, though his efforts prove useless when he soon finds himself cornered. He wonders if these things are truly monsters or simply piles of living junk. As they leap at him, he narrowly dodges their attacks and tries to flee again, only to trip and fall face first onto a human skull. The realization of his likely fate dawns on him. Cursing those who threw him into this hellish pit, he scrambles to his feet, only for the ground beneath him to collapse. He tumbles down and lands at the bottom of a cliff, momentarily safe from the monsters. But now a new threat arises, the air itself. Ruto realizes that the atmosphere in this pit is poisonous, and if he breathes it for too long, his lungs will be shredded from the inside. Covering his nose and mouth with his gloves, he staggers forward in search of a hiding place, though deep down he knows there might not be any safe spot in this wasteland. His body weakens as he coughs up blood, the sound echoing through the pit and drawing the monsters toward him again. Collapsed on the ground and unable to move, he nearly accepts his fate. But then, an image of Recto's dying body flashes through his mind, and a strange surge of power flows through his hands. Without noticing, his vision changes. He begins to see glowing lights emanating from the garbage piles, and from a nearby iron pipe. Crawling toward it, Ruto clings to the faint spark of survival within him. He grabs the pipe and stands, vowing to return to the surface, and take revenge on those who threw him down here, and on the one who killed his father. Fueled by rage, he fails to notice the monsters creeping up behind him. One lunges at him, but Ruto instinctively swings his iron pipe, smashing it away without even looking. The impact sends the creature flying straight into the umbrella of another pit dweller, who watches in shock, amazed that someone strong enough to fight the monsters has appeared. Meanwhile, Ruto's sanity begins slipping away. Completely consumed by madness, he fights like a beast, ignoring the poisonous air and the blood dripping from his nose. Even when he's slammed into massive rocks, he rises unharmed. When a monster crushes the rock beneath him, burying him under rubble, Ruto bursts free, dragging a metal pole along. With a powerful swing, he strikes the monster hard, only for another to emerge beneath him. He barely dodges its jaws, but the poisonous air finally takes its toll. Coughing up more blood, he falters as the monsters move in again. But that strange power within him awakens once more, giving him the strength, and insanity, to stand his ground. As two monsters attack at once, he emerges from the clash alive, slicing open the skull of one with a jagged metal sheet before slashing the other in half, causing it to explode into scraps. Exhausted, Ruto takes a brief pause, only for another massive monster to lumber toward him. The sight of it sends shivers down his spine, and he tries to flee to recover. But the creature slams the ground with full force, unleashing a shockwave that throws him across the area. When he opens his eyes, he's stunned to find a man in a creepy mask standing above him. Confused, Ruto wonders who this man is and where he came from, but before he can react, the stranger lifts him up and kicks him forward. Ruto coughs up blood again, ready to retaliate, when suddenly the man puts a gas mask over his face, allowing him to breathe clean air again. Now more confused than ever, Ruto asks if the man is a local and what this place is, but the masked stranger simply tells him to stay quiet. Of course, being as stubborn as ever, Ruto ignores him and keeps talking loudly, demanding answers. The man repeats his warning in a whisper, but Ruto complains that he can't hear him properly, and keeps asking if they're underground. Finally losing his patience, the masked man yells at him, declaring that they are not underground at all, they are above the surface. And it's all the fault of the people living up top who turned this place into the living hell it is now. He then explains to Ruto that the giant monsters made of trash are drawn to sound, and because Ruto wouldn't stop talking, they have now been noticed. The masked man adds that those beasts cannot be defeated with regular weapons, so their only option was to sneak away quietly, but that plan has already failed. One of the monsters reaches behind them at that moment, forcing the masked man to handle it before anything else. A golden light bursts out from his arm, coating his umbrella and turning it into a weapon. The monster lunges forward, but the masked man spins his umbrella right into its face, using it like a handheld blender to shred the creature apart. Its remains scatter across the ground before quickly dissolving into dust. Ruto is shocked by this strange power, and grows even more curious when the monster doesn't regenerate after being hit by that attack. Before he can say anything, a massive swarm of monsters rushes toward them. However, the masked man remains calm and confident that he can take care of them all. He sprints straight into the horde, slicing and exploding them effortlessly with his blade-like umbrella, and then leaps into the air, using the umbrella as a parachute to glide. Ruto watches in disbelief, wondering if this is some kind of special pit technology, or if it's something unique to the mysterious man. Meanwhile, the masked man floats in front of the last giant monster, which suddenly spits a huge ball of acid at him. He swiftly blocks it with his umbrella, scattering the acid all around. The acid explodes violently as it lands on the garbage heaps, creating a chain reaction of blasts. The masked man uses the monster's head as a platform to jump higher, and then channels more energy into his umbrella, making it grow in both size and destructive power. He dives straight down, slicing through the monster's head and even cutting into the ground beneath it. When it's over, he returns to Ruto, who stares in disbelief and demands to know who this guy really is. The man removes his mask and introduces himself as Injin, claiming to be nothing more than a simple cleaner. But the toxic air instantly makes him regret taking his mask off, and he curses Ruto for making him do it. Suddenly, Ruto collapses to the ground and loses consciousness. In his dream, he recalls a memory from his childhood, when he came home covered in filth after being bullied, and shoved into the sewer by other kids who mocked him for saying that objects are alive. Regto asked if he had fought back, and Ruto said no. He then asked Regto if it was true that when something is treated with care, a soul can come to live within it. As Regto cleaned him up, he admitted that the tale was merely an old legend meant to teach people to cherish what they own, but personally, he liked to believe that everything had a soul. Curious, Ruto asked if even the things in their home, like his gloves, had souls too. Regto simply said that if he treated them with care, they would gain one someday. Ruto wakes up abruptly from the dream to find himself chained, and being dragged along by Injin. He curses and demands to be freed, but Injin replies that he's only taking him to a safe place. Ruto doesn't care about safety anymore, he's determined to return to the surface to get revenge. His words make Injin pause. He explains that climbing back up to the sphere is impossible, it floats high above the ground and is always moving through the sky. Then, without further argument, he continues dragging Ruto, telling him to stop struggling and accept his new reality. But Ruto refuses to surrender, yelling that he'll reach the sphere no matter what it takes. He's convinced that Injin knows the way and is keeping it secret, so he shouts that he'll keep yelling until more monsters show up if Injin doesn't start talking. Frustrated, Injin finally snaps and tells Ruto that he'll show him exactly what kind of place this is. He drags him roughly across the ground and eventually brings him to a clearing inside a canyon, which strangely looks 100 times cleaner than the rest of the pit. Dropping Ruto there, Injin sarcastically tells him to have fun before walking away. Ruto yells after him to at least unchain him, but Injin doesn't respond and disappears into the distance. Moments later, several men wearing gas masks step out from nearby trucks and begin approaching him. Ruto wonders if they are the true residents of this place, while they curiously observe him in return. From his clothes, they quickly deduce that he must be someone from the sphere. They move closer, asking strange questions with eerie excitement. Nervous and unsure what to do, Ruto blurts out that he fell from the sphere, and the men immediately tear off their masks in shock. They become overly excited upon seeing a living sphere dweller before them, since, in the past, they had only ever found dead ones. Their curiosity takes over as they crowd around Ruto, inspecting his face and clothes, which makes him step back nervously. The men assure him that they mean no harm and begin untying him, leading Ruto to believe they are much kinder than Injin. But his relief doesn't last long, because it all turns out to be a trap. Moments later, he finds himself tightly chained inside a truck, confused and furious as he hears the men outside talking about their good fortune. They boast that capturing a living spherite will earn them a massive fortune since collectors pay outrageous prices for the body parts and clothing of the dead ones. Finding a living one is something that could drive them insane with greed. Their leader approaches Ruto and explains that the reason people are willing to pay so much for spherites isn't admiration, it's hatred. He spits venom in his words, cursing the people of the sphere for dumping all their waste on the world below until it formed mountains of poison, corrupting the air and birthing monsters. Those who died or lost their homes to this toxic land have held deep grudges ever since. So, whenever they come across a live spherite, they make sure to exact their revenge in the most brutal ways possible. The leader then mockingly says he'll offer Ruto a welcome meal to the surface, and presents him with rotten meat and spoiled leftovers. He laughs cruelly, saying that people from the sphere are too clean and delicate to ever handle filth like this, so he doubts Ruto could even swallow it. But when he forces a piece of rotten meat toward Ruto's mouth, he makes a huge mistake. Ruto suddenly bites down on his fingers, ripping off chunks of flesh and chewing them up along with the spoiled food. The men stare in horror as Ruto begins devouring the rest of the rotten meal, muttering that it isn't trash at all since it's still edible. The group nearly soils themselves, unable to comprehend what kind of monster they've captured. But this is only the beginning. Ruto's anger surges. He's furious at how people label things as worthless or unfit for use. He's done being treated like garbage. His strange power erupts once again, snapping his chains apart in a burst of energy. He leaps out of the truck, channeling his strength into the ground and making debris rise into the air around him. Watching from afar, Injin smiles proudly. He realizes that Ruto is a giver, someone capable of breathing life into objects and unlocking their hidden powers, just like himself. Down below, Ruto recalls Recto's words about how objects treated with care become alive and, in turn, treat their owners with care as well. He tears off his gas mask and picks up the very chain that had bound him, infusing it with energy and turning it into a living weapon. The men panic and charge at him, but Ruto slams the ground with his chain, forcing them to retreat. Their leader shouts for them to destroy the weapon, saying that a giver is helpless without their object. They manage to knock the chain from Ruto's grasp, but to their horror, he simply picks up a nearby tire and brings it to life too, transforming it into another weapon. Injin watches, amazed, because only the most gifted givers can do something like that. Ruto then tears through the group in a frenzy, defeating everyone before facing their leader, who's trembling, cursing, and nearly wetting himself. Just as Ruto is about to strike him down, Injin rushes in and stops him. Ruto suddenly snaps out of his berserk state, his power fading instantly. The tire disintegrates into dust, and a nosebleed trickles down his face as he struggles to understand what just happened. Injin calmly explains that using power so wildly puts a massive strain on his body. He then apologizes, saying he only provoked Ruto to confirm his abilities. Injin promises to explain everything about this world and about Ruto's powers, but in return, he wants Ruto to join the cleaners, the group tasked with fighting the monsters. Ruto, still dazed, says that he has no interest in joining them. The story will be continued in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.